I say this all the time, probably to the point of ad nauseam, but really start with the why, not the what. Like, why do you exist and how are you making people's lives better?
Hey, welcome back to Marketing Conversations with Lamphouse Films, the show where we bring you direct access to tips and insights from today's marketing thought leaders. I'm your host, Josh Henry. We are back from a little break with a lot of great new interviews. So if you want to make sure that you don't miss anything, subscribe and click the link in our description to sign up for the bonus content. We'll send you extended interviews and all kinds of other great stuff. Today on the show, I'm chatting with the CMO of Skillshare, Liana. She is brilliant and has a lot of great insights to offer, and so we're going to jump right into that conversation. Enjoy.
I got into marketing totally by accident. So I graduated from college very sure that I was going to be a lawyer. And then I took a job as a paralegal. My dad at the time said, if you don't go to law school right out of college, you will never go. And I essentially said, you don't know what you're talking about, but as is often the case, Dad was right. So I took a job I really wanted to move to New York City. So I took a job as a paralegal, expected that to be a 2-year stint before law school. And, in the course of that year, what I realized was I thought I wanted to be a lawyer because I had this vision that lawyers find really novel solutions for nuanced problems. And what I realized in my year as a paralegal is that actually it's a really precedent-bound profession. And so they're not looking for novel solutions. They're really looking to fit square peg, round hole. How do we do what we did in the past and sort of apply it to today? And so as I was coming to that realization, a friend of a friend said, hey, I know the owner of the New York Film Academy. He's looking for a marketing director. I think you'd be perfect. I had a pretty awful perspective on marketing. I mean, I genuinely just did not think it was what people who wanted real careers did, which is awful to say, but true. And she stayed with me, which is so lucky for me. She kept saying, I think you should look into it. I think you should look into it. And as I sort of dug into it, I realized what I thought I liked about law was actually far more true about marketing, right?
Yeah.
Really good marketing is about taking something that is often not well understood and finding ways to bring it to the masses, and to do it in a way that feels really human-centered and really, and I've opted to work in places where I'm also doing that for really innovative ideas. So helping to sort of rewrite the way we operate as a global society in one way or another. So that's how I got into marketing, and it's been far more years than I care to share. Probably about 15 or 16 years that I've been in marketing. And again, there was that few year stint as a COO at blockchain, but otherwise in marketing.
So why marketing? Now I've got it. Why Skillshare? How did you get there?
So I've worked in 3 really different industries. All of them were interesting to me because of their mission. And at Skillshare, it really is around the power of creativity and curiosity. So, our mission is to inspire discovery through creativity. And as I was thinking about the role, I was really drawn to this idea of being able to redefine what it means to be creative. I think sometimes we think of that as being, we're artists with a capital A. But we're all creative, right? Like if you held a crayon as a child, you're creative. If you figured out a way to structure information in an Excel spreadsheet that is new and different, you are creative. And so I think at the highest level, it was the ability to be part of reshaping that in a more global way. And then I think it's the stories. We'll talk to and as I was interviewing, and shortly after I joined, I talked to both students and teachers on our platform. And there was a woman who was a big traveler, and she broke her hip. She was bedbound and really sort of dipping into depression. And her granddaughter introduced her to Skillshare, and she used our website to build a travel site so that she could sort of live vicariously through her previous trips, while also sort of feeling like she was moving forward. She was learning new things. And so that is really what brought me in, was this idea at the macro level of shifting what it means to be creative, and at the micro level to be part of a company that is, I think, a really bright spot on the internet. It's we have an incredibly collaborative, supportive community. And so to be a part of that was really, really compelling for me.
Bright spots on the internet is an important business to be in, for sure.
Few and far between.
Oh yeah. I love what you're saying about redefining creativity, because I think there's a really toxic idea out there that you've either got it or you don't. And I've been directing for I don't know, 7 years or something. And I look back at my career, I'm like, I used to be a terrible director. And now I'm a halfway decent director. And I'm like, that's not because I was born being good at this. It's because I was given opportunities to fail and try again. And that's what it takes in order to be a good creative. And we get that about everything else in our lives. But for some reason, it's like if you're trying to be a photographer or a painter or whatever, it's like if you don't knock it out of the park on your first try, you feel a certain way about yourself.
Yes.
And so,
yes.
yeah, tell me about that mission. I didn't realize, now that you mention it, I see it in your ads. I see it in your creative, but I didn't realize that was so core to what you guys were doing.
Yeah. I mean, I love just hearing you tell that story because, that's what energizes me, is being able to, sort of bring that story to life for so many of us. We have a teacher on our platform, and I'm forgetting, it's one of three gentlemen, and I can't remember it, so I'm not going to name names in case I get it wrong, but he does a poster a day challenge. And, he says, if you go back to his first poster at the beginning of when he started doing it, and you look at his 365th poster, they are significantly different, right? Yeah. And he's a trained artist. I mean, I think that's true for all of us. And so I think for us, a big part of our mission is the journey is more important than the destination. So when we were launching our new brand identity, we picked a green called Wander Green, because so much for us it's
love
about
that green, by the
wandering.
way.
Yeah, thank you. And we have these big squiggly lines, and the whole idea there is there's no beginning, there's no end. It's really about the journey. And and I think when you sort of take some of these classes, you realize that firsthand. I've taken a bunch of our classes, and I don't know that, although I will say I actually have some art that I put up on our wall. It's probably not amazing, but I'm proud of it. And more importantly, like the meditative state that I went into when I was creating. I mean, you sort of give yourself permission to forget the world around you and really just kind of dive into creation. And I think anytime you create, like, creation begets creation, and so you walk out of that process, maybe what you created isn't something amazing, but your brain is now suddenly thinking in a much more innovative way. I think that makes a huge difference.
I often say, like, ideas only replenish once they're spent. And so many people will hold on to their best idea because they want to wait till they're good enough to do it. And I'm like, if you do that, that will always be your best idea. But if you do that right now, you'll have a better idea the second you're done.
Yes.
It just puts you in that space.
I think it's a good idea that's having an end point too. It's like, do the idea and then do it again. And then do it again. It's like, and every time will feel different, and you'll learn something new from it, and you'll surprise yourself along the way. So I think it's an incredibly powerful process.
That's amazing. I want to chat with you a little bit about the process of finding the right people, because it's not like, some organizations, it's like there's a certain type of person who wants this product, and it's really easy to then identify them. But it's a very different type of person who wants to learn these different skills that you guys are offering. And so how do you go about finding those groups?
Yeah. So I think a big step for us was about a year and a half ago when we launched the new brand identity. So just 2 seconds of background. We've been around for about 11 years. We initially were sort of an, across the board model. So we are an open platform. So, if you wanted to upload classes on film, you could, and we encourage that. We think it's a really big differentiator for us in the market. And so, but we literally had classes that spanned, a workout class, a cooking class, a coding class. I mean, really across the board. About 2 years ago, we sort of took a step back, and we were hitting our 10-year anniversary, and I think it was a natural moment of self-reflection. And we did a pretty big exercise where we went out to the market. We looked at sort of competitors in the market. We looked at the industry more broadly. And then we talked to a lot of folks. We talked to folks who were on the platform and were passionate, folks who had been on the platform and left, teachers, et cetera. And what came out at the end of that was this realization that creativity, broadly defined, was really our sweet spot. It was where the classes we were not only creating, but that folks were uploading onto our platform were of the highest quality.
Wow.
But then also those were the classes where our students, our learners were getting the most value. And so we decided to pivot to be really focused on creativity. And so I think that was the first step. I think that was the day we decided we are not going to be everything to everyone, which means, there are folks who were on the platform for whom we are no longer the right destination, because they're not interested in this content. Our argument would actually be that everyone, this speaks to everyone at some level, because like I said, we define creativity pretty broadly. But that was the first step. And so really what we're looking for are folks, who are lifelong learners, who would identify themselves as such, who care deeply about self-improvement, who do not view themselves as, who really subscribe to this idea that the journey is more important than the destination.
So it's less about, how are we going to find the photographers? How are we going to find the cooks? How are we going to find the people who share this common ethos?
Yes, I think so. And I think some of that is, you'd be hard pressed to find a better place on the internet for a lot of this learning. When Adobe launches a new product, we are their exclusive education partner. So when they launched Fresco, on the day it launched, there was nowhere else that you could go to take classes other than Skillshare. So to some degree, if you are a photographer or an illustrator or a graphic designer who's looking to learn a really specific skill in the creative space, you're very likely going to naturally find us.
So that's interesting, that partnership that you were just talking about, where you are just the first people out of the gate with that information. How much of your marketing is you going out and finding the right people to come to your platform, and how much of it is creating those strategic partners that forces them to come find you?
Yeah, so I would say, so it's a bit of both. And then I would add a third element, which is we do focus a lot of our efforts on the marketing team on engaging the folks that we have on the platform.
Really?
So we have an incredible growth team that does a lot of work around finding folks where they are. So we do a lot of YouTube sponsorships. We do a lot of, paid advertising, et cetera. But then we have an equally big team that focuses on engaging the folks once they're on the platform. So how do we learn more about our users? How do we make sure that they're getting the value that they need and deserve from our platform? And for me, the way that I think about marketing, I don't think of it as me trying to sell you on something. That's not, that's sales. And that's not really what I'm passionate about, nor what I think is most impactful. So to me, I think of it more as brand than marketing is really the way that we think about our team. And really that's about, at the core, who are you and what do you stand for? So I think of us as being the arbiters for helping define that for the organization and then helping us stay true to it. And so we work really closely with our content team and our product team and our engineering team to make sure that we are really living our values on a daily basis and that we are adding value to the lives of folks. My perspective is this. I think when I started my career, performance marketing did not exist. Facebook had been created a couple of years earlier. They had not yet figured out the ad model. It was very much, there was, direct marketing, but it was like direct mail or events-based marketing, et cetera. So when I joined, it was very much about building a brand. I think over the course of my career, the pendulum really swung to the other side where it was only about performance marketing and only about ROI. And I think what we're seeing now is you really can't have performance you can have performance marketing without a strong brand, but it will only take you so far. Yeah. And I think the real magic happens when you combine the art and the science. So when you have, and we've seen this, right? Our growth efforts have grown tremendously now that they are supported by a much stronger brand. And so, I think for me, it's about finding that magic, sort of middle ground between the two. I will also say, we do work hard to make sure that we're measuring some of these bigger brand bets. And so, we have brand tracking software that we use. We do brand lift studies. We do a lot of retargeting. So if we do something like a big out of home campaign, we will do, we will layer retargeting onto that so that we have some
metrics on how it's going. Yeah.
So I think it's that balance of measuring as much as you can, but also understanding that there is a fair amount of art to it. And being willing to take those risks, which I think is a lot easier to do if you do it in a really incremental way. So Matt, our CEO, and I were just talking yesterday, and I'm really proud of last year. We did a lot of new channel tests, a lot of which failed, if I'm being really honest. Or maybe didn't fail, but I wouldn't do them again necessarily.
Yeah.
But they were great. We learned a ton from them, and we feel good about the way we did them because we didn't put all of our eggs in one basket. We test things in really, it's that balance of testing large enough that you don't look back on the test and say, well, what if we had put a little more money behind it? Would it have come out differently? But not so much money that you're sort of kicking yourself if it doesn't yield what you're hoping it will. And then building on that, which is, we did that as an example with connected TV, went in with a very small budget, found that it worked. So we've continued to increase our budget. And then there comes a point where, diminishing returns on spending more. And so then you sort of pause and find the sweet spot. So that's how we think about it.
Yeah, that's great. I think for me, it's like there are some companies that start with that sort of more salesy ROI stuff and then sort of build brand into the back end of that. And then there are companies like you guys who start with brand and let everything flow from there. Yeah. And I think it's maybe feels like the riskier way to go, but it uncaps the potential of like what those other pieces can do for you.
I agree. And I also think it provides a really clear sort of path. It illuminates the path you're on. I hear a lot when I'm having conversations, well, how do you decide whether to do this or this? And it's like, well, if you have your North Star, if you've put the work into figuring out what your brand is, those decisions they don't often come up. It's very clear where you should be focusing your efforts. And so I think it's more work at the outset, but you will make that up very quickly.
So if you were to be chatting with somebody who is a year and a half back from where you are now, who is thinking about doing a brand positioning shift, what are some of the big things that you learned along the way that have made your shift successful?
I would say a few things. I think one, make sure you do a brand lift study before and after.
Tell me about that.
So we do it in two ways. We have some brand tracking software that we can follow in real time. So, if we launch a campaign, we can sort of see how our brand equity score is moving up or down.
Yeah.
But we did an actual brand lift study. So we hired a researcher to come in and survey, brand awareness, both aided and unaided. And then also sort of what people associated with our brand. And we did, and so it's an investment because it's expensive and it's a long term. So we did this study right as the brand was launching, so before sort of it had permeated, and then we did it again at the beginning of this year. And we learned that our unaided awareness doubled, our aided awareness went up by 20%. So without that, you can sort of back to the point you made earlier of it not being as clear an ROI, it gave us the tools to be able to show, and I'm very lucky to work alongside executives and a board that understand inherently the power of brand, but that is not the case for everyone. And I think having, the numbers to show the impact is really important. And so I think that's one piece of advice I would give. I say this all the time, probably to the point of ad nauseam, but, really start with the why, not the what. Like, why do you exist and how are you making people's lives better? I think people too often go to, and I've done this, I've totally done this in previous branding exercises where you go to like, let's build a new logo. And that should actually be the very last thing you do, because it's not about a different look and feel, right? Like if you look at something like Facebook, the name is not particularly life-altering. The logo is not especially interesting. That's not really what matters. What matters is sort of what you imbue into that. And I think you can't really do that effectively if you don't know what you stand for and who you are and what need you're filling. So my second piece of advice would be to make sure you start with that. And then my third piece of advice is make sure, it is very important that you don't democratize the process too much. If there's too many voices, then what ends up happening is you end up with the thing that everyone feels okay about versus the thing that half the people love and half the people hate. And actually a really strong brand is often it's more important to be the thing that half the people love and half the people hate. So it's a fine balance, but I think making sure you get buy-in and that you do bring the right stakeholders in from the beginning. What you don't want to do is put all this work in and then feel like you have to convince people.
Yeah, that's good.
You want them to feel like, oh, I had a say in building that, and they want to convince people on your behalf. And so I think that's the third piece of advice that I would give.
That's so good. Marketing is such a balance of art and science. And that idea of like, yeah, I feel like the best picture winner every single year is like everybody's third favorite movie because of the democratization of how it's voted on. And with brands, it's like that is a necessity that you need to be polling everybody. But if you just leave it there, you're going to end up with everybody's third favorite thing. And it's not really going to be extra special.
That's right.
Thanks for watching another episode of Marketing Conversations with Lamp House Films. Lamp House is a production company that focuses on film-centered marketing campaigns. If you want to chat with us about your next campaign, we'd love to hear from you. You can reach me directly at josh@lamphousefilms.com. If you enjoyed the show, make sure to subscribe and sign up for our bonus content. It's 100% free, and we'll send you extended interviews with our guests, as well as lots of other great content. See you next time.